Thank you very much. I'm going to move on to a call for the SEDA and intimate any apologies, Cheryl, please.
Thanks, Chair. If I just run through this again, if you can indicate your attendance, please. Councillor Graham Barton.
Yeah, thanks.
Councillor John McGee.
Yep.
Councillor Ellen Friel.
I'm here, thanks, Cheryl.
Councillor Elaine Cowan.
Here.
Councillor Peter Mabin.
Yeah, good morning.
Councillor Claire Maitland.
Here.
Councillor Linda Mabin.
Here, thanks, Cheryl.
Councillor William Lennox.
Morning, here.
I've got apologies from Councillor Billy Crawford. Councillor Neil Watt.
I'm here, thank you, Cheryl.
Councillor Drew Filson. Councillor Jennifer Hogg.
Good morning, I'm online, thank you.
Councillor James Kyle.
Here, thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Cheryl. Members are going to move on to item 1 in the agenda, and that's any declarations of interest. Don't see anybody online or in the room. Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move on to item 2, and that's the hearing procedure. Cheryl, could you take us through that? Thanks.
Thanks, Chair. So page 3 of your papers highlights the hearing procedure for this morning. The Chief Planning Officer or representative will give details of the application. Thereafter, the objectors and all their agents will present their objections to committee in support of the written objections. Each objector will be given 5 minutes. Following that, members of the committee may ask questions of the objectors on the submissions that they have made. And to note that this is not to be taken as an opportunity to comment on the merits or otherwise of the planning application. Thereafter, the applicant or their agents will speak for a maximum total of 15 minutes. Following that, the members of the committee may ask questions of the applicants on their submissions made. And again, to note that this is not to be taken as an opportunity to comment on the merits or otherwise of the planning application. The hearing will then close and all parties will be asked to withdraw to the public gallery and the committee will consider the application. At this stage, the Chief Planning Officer or representative will address the committee and give appropriate clarification on any issues raised during the hearing. Following that, the committee will then make a decision. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Cheryl. Members are going to move on to item 3 in the agenda, and that is planning application number 24/0230/PP. That's a change of use of agricultural land and siting of 10 number mobile holiday pods/lodges with associated infrastructure for tourism, accommodation at land at Hillhead Farm, Hillhead C1, Dan Taggart, Brentwood from A70 to B7046, near Scales, Ochiltree, East Ayrshire by Custody, McKendry from Bonnie Booths Limited. The members, we do have a hearing this morning for this application, so I'm going to propose that we give 5 minutes for each objector and 15 minutes for the agent, if we're okay with that. Thank you very much. So we're going to move on to part 1 of that hearing. I'm going to hand over to Fiona Finlay to take us through. Oh, sorry, Madeline's going to take us through that. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Good morning, members. So the application in front of you is for a tourism development in the rural area. As the application was subject to objections from 24 parties, it falls to the Planning Committee for decision as per the Council scheme of delegation. The content of these representations is summarised in paragraphs 12 and 13 of the report in front of you. Consultation responses are set out in paragraphs 10 and 11, and no consultees raised an objection, subject to the attachment of appropriate conditions. So I'd note here that we are proposing a slight amendment to the report in front of you. Following further discussion with Ayrshire Roads Alliance, we propose to insert a condition for the implementation of the submitted construction traffic management plan. So the wording would be something along the lines of: the construction traffic management plan will be implemented as approved during construction of the development. And we also propose that either condition 11 on landscaping is amended or a new condition is inserted to ensure that the 2-metre land mound proposed to the southern part of the site and the planting on top of it is in place before the development is brought into use. The mound will be important in ensuring there is appropriate visual screening between the site and the neighbouring dwelling. So moving on to the slides, the application is situated in the rural area. You can see it in sort of bottom left there, around 4 kilometres south of Ochiltree. And here's just a closer view of the site plan. The site is adjacent to the north to a group of 5 dwelling houses. centred on the former Hillhead Farm. The closest neighbouring dwelling is Augusta House, you can see to the south of the site there. The site is partially brownfield, having previously been occupied by an equestrian arena. There is some remaining hard standing from this previous development, but the remainder of the site is undeveloped greenfield land. There are several existing trees of varying species and mature beech hedgerow along the boundary with the C61 road. So, as I mentioned, the proposal is for the change of use to tourism with the siting of 10 tourist holiday pods and lodges, which you can see the layout here, and the associated infrastructure. A new access will be formed to the northwest boundary of the site, and each unit will have a hot tub and parking with EV charging points. Hard and soft landscaping will be formed throughout the site, and an existing soil mound will be levelled, and that new 2-metre screening mound will be formed to the southern boundary of the site. This will have tree planting on top of it of various native species, including rowan, alder and birch. As I stated previously, this mound will provide a barrier to between the proposed units and Augusta House to help mitigate issues of noise and visual amenity impacts. With this and the distance from the units to Augusta House, it is considered that there will be an acceptable level of amenity. Hot tubs are proposed to each unit. You can see them sort of in green next to the units there, and these will be sited so that the unit itself provides an additional barrier between Augusta House and the hot tub. With this arrangement, along with the measures to form a landscaped bund, there are not considered to be any unacceptable impacts as a result of the use of the hot tubs. The existing trees at the site are proposed to be retained with new additional tree planting, and a storage hut and refuse area will be sited to the northeast of the site. Private water treatment system and suds area will be installed to the northwest of the site, just adjacent to the entrance. The proposal doesn't involve any alterations to site levels, as indicated here, but you can see the slightly sloping nature of the land and both the existing and proposed land mounds. So just to go through here, some elevations. You can see the design of the proposed lodges and pods. They're prefabricated units which meet the definition of a caravan due to their mobile nature. So there's 4 different designs proposed. And this is the proposed storage hut to be erected near the entrance to the site. And we'll move on to some photographs. So this is looking north with the site to the right of the screen. You can see that existing hedgerow, which is to be maintained. And this is a view of the site looking north. You can see the sort of remnants of the previous equestrian arena there. And again, some of the hard standing that's still in place. This is the line of existing trees that are to be retained. And then this is looking south. That's Augusta House that you can see most prominently. And another view looking north with some of the existing trees. And then that's a view looking north again with, again, Augusta House there and the C61 public road. And this is the existing road opening that's to the southwest of the site that ARA have identified as an appropriate passing place, which we'll come on to in a bit. So just to move on to the merits of the application, it's recommended for approval subject to conditions. The principle of the proposal is supported under the relevant tourism policies from the development plan, and this is set out in paragraphs 22 to 26 of the report. The development will contribute positively towards the local economy and has potential to be a viable business. Key issues relating to the proposal are considered in the report. These are mainly relating to the design, residential amenity, roads and transport matters, biodiversity and nature, and flooding and water management. With regards to the residential amenity, the site is adjacent to 5 existing dwellings, with Augusta House being the closest. As already noted, and as in the report, it is concluded that in terms of noise, privacy and visual amenity, these can be sufficiently mitigated. It is noted that Environmental Health have raised no objection to the application, and additionally they have advised that it will be necessary for the site operator to obtain a short-term lets licence from the council's licensing section, and this would generally involve the imposition of conditions relating to noise level and operating hours. With regards to roads matters, Ayrshire Roads Alliance had advised in response to the proposal that the C61 road between the site and its junction with the A70 to the north is not suitable for construction traffic, and if it was to be used for construction traffic, then this would require the formation of intervisible passing places by the applicant. Following discussion, a construction traffic management plan was submitted by the applicant, which states that construction traffic will only access the site from the south of the B7046. There is an existing road opening, which shown here, along this section of the road, which is an acceptable passing place to ARA. And as I noted earlier, we also recommend to insert a condition which secures the implementation of the construction traffic management plan. We've recommended various conditions to be attached to any decision should members decide to approve the application. These relate to various matters such as ensuring the use of the site is limited to tourism, ensuring a management plan is in place for the operation of the site, and ensuring ecological matters are attended to. And as I noted previously, the application is recommended for approval subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thanks, Marilyn. Members, we're now on to part 2 of the hearing. And it's at this stage we will hear from the objectors and the agent to present their written objections. Now, we've got a seat up here, so what we'll just ask any objectors to come forward and present your case, and please at the end of your 5 minutes just stay in position so that the members can then ask you questions. But Mr. Bickelly.
Good morning. Today, our community is fighting for survival. This development will destroy our way of life, and we refuse to let it go unchallenged. To ensure our case is grounded in fact and policy, we saw independent planning and landscaping experts to scrutinize this application. Their verdict: this proposal is an abomination, violating at least 17 planning policies. One violation alone is enough to warrant refusal, 17 making approval indefensible. Time is limited, so here's a brief selection of those blatant policy breaches. NPF 414 and ELDP Res 3 demand that development safeguard privacy, peace, and quality of life. This fails outright, is overbearing, disruptive, and too close to homes. ELDP and E12 protects rural tranquility, yet these introduce excessive noise, air, and odor and light pollution. NPF 4.4 and ELDP-1 require enhancing rural environment, yet this intrudes on the landscape and disrupts rural character. Next, the planning officer's report contradicts the developer claim of a low noise site. Developers explicitly state targeting wedding parties, meaning large, interconnected groups, late night drinking, and excessive noise. There is no enforceable way to stop guests from partying into the early hours. Even the hot tubs alone are catastrophic. The baseline nighttime noise here is just 36.5 decibel, yet a single hot tub produces up to 67 decibel, almost double. With 10 hot tubs, the impact will be unbearable. The planning report claims the land is partly brownfield. This is a questionable misrepresentation. The site was never industrial or urban land. It was woodland, then an equestrian paddock with grassland, predominantly greenfield, if anything. There are no permanent structure of significance. Under NPF 4.9, development of greenfield land is prohibited unless it's exceptional justification, and this proposal has no such thing. Critical infrastructure has also been overlooked. This site contains soakaways. There's no sign this has been addressed. Additionally, BT cables run through, posing serious risk to communication services. Ignoring these issues isn't negligent. It could have serious consequences for residents and essential services. Worse, this proposal would overwhelm our community overnight. It would increase the population from just 9 to 57 plus residents. There's more than 6 times our current size, turning the hamlet of 5 homes into a settlement larger than the nearest village, which is scarce, which has 36 residents. The scale is excessive. This is gross overdevelopment, and life as we know will change dramatically and irreversibly. This proposal also contradicts ELDP IND 2 and Tour 1 with a single track road already over capacity. The C61 is an excluded route full of steep braes, bends and ditches. It has no pavement, walkable verges or lights, as you've seen. ARA deemed this road unfit for use without passing places, but then seemingly changed their mind and their stance without any justification. It appears they caved to the developer, accepting an extremely dangerous workaround, using a private pothole driveway of the existing glamping site, private homes and an equestrian facility as a so-called passing place without any consent or asking. This is a disaster waiting to happen. A blind corner with zero visibility, there are speeding traffic, already puts people, horses, pets, and protected sheep at risk. And what happens when the owner installs a gate to protect their property? This impractical workaround with no enforceable controls on tourist or construction traffic will result in inevitable accidents. Letting a developer negotiate away road safety rules isn't just reckless, it sets a dangerous precedent. What stops others from doing the same? Who really governs our roads? In August 24, Councillor William Lennox and Deputy Provost John McGee warned that ARA and planning officer must take rural road safety more seriously. Yet, this handling completely ignores those warnings. The issue is so severe that MSP Elena Witham is intervened and is investigating. Additionally, this council has already set a precedent by rejecting an almost identical application due to privacy invasion and noise impact. 190673 PP for glamping site at Burnside Cottages was refused for those reasons, yet this proposal is even closer to homes. Also, 190100 PPP, a single home next to our cluster, was refused as a sporadic and inappropriate extension, and the fact that it would adversely impact the landscape surrounding the development site. Yet, this sprawling 10-unit commercial development is significantly worse. Approving this would be inconsistent and unfair, a clear double standard. Planning integrity and public trust in this process demands refusal. Moreover, this area is already saturated with glamping sites. One is just 600 meters away on this very road, yet another here is reckless overdevelopment, eroding rural character. Approvals must be based on demonstrated need, not speculation. There is no evidence another site is required here. Oversaturation will not increase tourism. It will cannibalize existing businesses. However, if you believe another glamping site is needed in our ward, a better alternative exists. Just 5 miles away, 240449 PP offers an appropriate site with zero objections. Refusing this application is not a loss when there are already better options on the table. In closing, we are appalled that planners and ARA have blatantly ignored undeniable fact, independent expert analysis and their own policies. The reports fail to meaningfully acknowledge any of our objections or suggested conditions, making their clear and disregard for reality all the more unacceptable. Along with numerous other procedural failures we detail via email, this leaves us prepared to scale this case to the Scottish Public Service Ombudsman and seek legal advice. Councillors, you are our last hope for justice. Approving this application would betray your people and sends devastating message like planning policies, past, present, and public safety protection mean nothing and can be inconsistently applied, selectively interpreted,
I'll sum it up now, thanks. I've been a bit lenient with the times.
or ignored when convenient. Rural communities' rights and voices don't matter, and they are powerless against commercial pressure and exploitation. And developers, not elected representatives, are shaping planning outcomes. You were elected to uphold policy with integrity and fairness. Approving this would be a catastrophic failure of that duty, politically, ethically, and legally. It will tear apart a rural community, shatter public trust in you, and destroy the integrity of the planning process. Stand with us, your voters, not those profiting at our expense. Please do not abandon us. Please refuse this application. Thank you.
Members, do you have any questions at this point? Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Kelly. Yeah, can I ask Mr. Jeff Lay if you see it? Thanks, Mr. Lay. Again, it'll be 5 minutes. And if
Thank
you're
you.
ready to start.
My house is within about 35 metres of the boundary of the proposed site. We moved there 28 years ago to enjoy a rural existence, as did most other residents. There was just one other property at Hillhead then, now there are 5. We haven't objected to any of the development, nor to the 4 holiday lodges across the lane at Burnet Mill, because they were all sympathetic to the local area. However, the proposed development is large in scale, does not fit with the local area, and will spoil what is essentially a peaceful rural environment. About 3 or 4 years ago, a planning application was made for a single house on land at the top of Burnett Mills Drive, which is close to Hillhead and to the proposed site. This was refused on the grounds that it was an inappropriate extension to an existing grouping and would impact adversely on the surroundings. If that was refused, then this much larger development should be refused on the same grounds. The whole area is on high ground as it is exposed to high winds, and just this winter we've lost polytunnels and greenhouse due to high winds. I wonder how resilient the pods and hot tubs would be. With respect to wildlife, I haven't seen the ecological assessment report. My own observations are that since Scare's open cast closed, we've seen a marked increase in wildlife, and it's not unusual now to see deer, pheasant, the occasional fox and red squirrel, grey squirrels, hares, and even a badger. There is a colony of pipistrelle bats in the area, and there is also a wide variety of bird species. Deer regularly cross the site throughout the year in their travels from northwest to southeast and back. And last year, a mother deer had 2 baby deer in the proposed site and left them there while she foraged for food. The deer go from the site into the wood just to the north and jump through the hedge and across the lane. About 2 years ago, a male deer jumped out as I was driving past the woods, straight into the side of my car. The deer was fatally injured, had to be humanely killed. If it had been a couple of seconds later, it would have been through the windscreen. So I'm concerned about the road safety aspect of the proposal. Not only potential deer strikes, but the proposed site is situated on a single-track twisting country lane, the C61. There are no official passing places along this nearly 2.5-mile route. And Ayrshire Roads Alliance originally deferred the decision because the lane is Class C, has no intervisible passing places, and is classed as an excluded route. However, about 2 weeks ago, ARA reversed that decision after agreeing with the applicant that they would not use the lane north to the A70, but use the lane south to the B7046, which is a shorter route. Now, I can understand that this may work for construction traffic, but it won't be policed for potential guests. So I feel there would still be a lot of extra traffic north to the A70. If all traffic does use the C61 to the south, then that's even more of a safety concern. It's a relatively short stretch of road, but there are 7 properties accessed from it, as well as 4 holiday lodges, an equestrian facility and 2 field gates. There are no obvious official passing places. There's a ditch to the side of the lane, and drivers use the driveways into Hillhead and Burnett Mill as unofficial passing places. There's actually now a large pothole at the entrance to Burnett Mill. The approach to the site from the B7046 northwards is up a hill to a blind bend, and it's impossible to see oncoming traffic either way until at the apex of the bend, where there is a field entrance. And this is used as a passing place, but can be very muddy and rutted when wet. This section of the road actually is also used by horse riders, tractors, dog walkers, cyclists, and sheep. The use of the C61 south means the B7046 will have increased traffic. This road from the Sinclairston turnoff to Cumnock is in a very poor condition for long sections of its length due to extremely poor patching. It's a real bone shaker of a road, and extra traffic will only make it worse. It may also mean increased traffic just through Scares Village. I also have concerns that day-to-day management of the site may have an adverse effect on the houses at Hillhead. Since we haven't seen any site management plans, we don't know where it's going to be managed from. And to conclude, I feel this application should be rejected on road safety grounds and that it does not meet, among others, Res 3, NE 12 and NE 4 of the LDP2. It will reduce biodiversity and will have a detrimental effect on existing properties. Although it may take a site visit to fully appreciate the scale of the development, the loss of amenity and the road issues, and why so many locals objected with no letters at all of support. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Lee. Members? Any questions? No. Councillor Count?
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Lee, I was interested there to hear about your local knowledge of using the roads. Would you say it's fair that that residents' knowledge helps with the restrictions on the road? So what would you envisage with visitors that don't have that knowledge, some of the impact that would have? You need to put your mic on. Yeah, thanks.
I think it would have an impact. Any visitors coming, the locals who live there know the lanes. They know the road very well. They know where the passing places are. We know where to look ahead. And you have to look far ahead sometimes to know where there's a possible passing place. It's quite often nowadays, especially with delivery vans, that two can be stuck somewhere in between two passing places because maybe the local driver thought, well, he's nearer a passing place than I am. I'll go on. But the driver doesn't realise. So I think anybody out with the local area will have difficulty sometimes. And especially if there's excess traffic, it can be quite nasty. And people don't seem to like to reverse nowadays.
Any further questions? Thanks very much, Mr. Lee. Could I ask Mr. Alan McCamley, please?
So that they can hear me. Hands up, any one of you that would like a site like this in front of your house. I see a rush. I see a rush of hands.
No, we can't do that.
Oh, why not? You are the ones that's making the decision.
Through you, Chair.
So I'm asking the question, would you like that? You see a woman there reduced to tears and shaken because her privacy in her house is going to be destroyed.
Through you, Chair, that we're in a hearing procedure.
Yes, well, I'm bringing out the points that you need to realise, and I am coming to that if you will give me time to speak, sir.
Mr. McCarley, the purpose of this part of the hearing is for you to summarise your objections. It's not to ask questions of the members.
Oh, because you don't want to answer. I think that's the reason.
That's not the case.
We'll continue on if you don't want to answer.
I'm going to pause the hearing at this moment and just explain. The hearing process is not a statutory thing we do, but in East Ayrshire Council, we're trying to give everybody a voice, and this is your opportunity to put that forward. And I'm just kindly
I asked a question.
A calm manner. And
can I not ask a question?
Not at this point in time.
Right. Well, you can footnote it for further application then. But anyway. You see a woman reduced to tears. We're next door neighbours too. We're farmers. The road is totally and utterly unsuitable for all this extra traffic. It bothers it coping with the farms and the private traffic that is on it already. The number of delivery vans, etc., that we have pulled out of the bunkers and the ditches over the last number of years goes without saying. And if you come, I can show you the tracks where they went in and stuck. There is virtually no passing places on it. And for you to say that the people that's using these glampings and pods and whatever they are, that they'll all turn left when they come out and go out onto the back road, which, as Jeff says, is totally unsuitable. And I have complained for years to the council and been ignored about the state of that back road up by Scares. And going through Scares Village, it is a narrow place. It will increase the traffic there. It will increase it out heading to the north side, out towards the A70. And there's a patch there which is in a dreadful state. It's patched. A blind man could patch it better than what it's patched. And it needs to be gathered up and resurfaced. It will affect the wildlife. It will affect our dairy herd. Previous experiences from people that lived in Augusta House, careless with their dog. Dog chased a calf. Ended up after a storm of rain in the river down at Burnock Mill in water that depth. We were lucky to get it out. It was too deep for us to wade into. We were lucky to get it out alive. We might have lost a valuable calf because they were scared with this dog. Also, personal experience, we do run a small turkey flock for Christmas. And the previous owners had a dog which came in. Now, it didn't get in because the turkeys were inside, but it stood outside and it barked and it scared the turkeys. Now, turkeys are not, they don't need to be scared. And they were frightened, they flapped, they bruised their wings, they bruised themselves, resulting in considerable loss to us. So it did. Now, if you bring a lot of strangers and people with pets and dogs, they'll come down the long road because they're not going to do a detour to the village for the paper or whatever, or to the bakery for rolls or whatever for their breakfast. They'll take the handy road going down, and it is reasonably well surfaced, thankfully, in recent years, compared to going out round by the rough road and doing a detour. Or they'll walk down with the dog or their bicycle or whatever. They'll clutter an already overloaded road and make it dangerous, not only for themselves, their pets, and for us as residents and everyday users of it. So they will. The wildlife will also be detrimentally affected. Possibly our turkey flock again, and our dairy cows. And cows do not like disturbance. They need peace, they need quiet. It can affect their fertility and can affect their milk yield and their compositional quality, which in turn, going to the Lactalis creamery, will affect them. If the compositional quality is altered, it affects them in their cheese making. So it's not only the people on the road it's affecting further down. It will affect delivery vehicles, lorries, feed lorries, fertilizer lorries, semen sales reps, etc., all the people that legitimately use it. Now, do you want food in the country, or do you want to have the whole place turned into these glamping pods? Someday when your bellies is empty, you'll be glad of the farmers, but it seems to be it's a matter of persecute the farmers, put whatever you like in, get rid of them. But someday, let me tell you, I mightn't live to see it, but someday it'll be the same as the war years. You'll be glad of us. Now, I'm calling on the planning committee to refute this totally and utterly, because it's ludicrous that we're all gathered here even debating it. You look at how many objections that there already is, and you've ignored that, and you've got it to this, wasting time and money and people's time coming here and causing a lot of stress. Totally and utterly, I'm calling on you for you to reject it.
Thank you very much.
Have I said too much?
Oh, you just.
But I still would like to know which any one of you would you like that in your front door, and bring yourselves.
At this point, I'm going to open it up to members for questions. Thank you.
Is it going to be open for questions?
At this point, sorry, Mister. Did you have any questions? No. Okay. I think we'll just leave it at that. Okay, I've got a Mrs. Susan Turner.
The proposed development will have a major impact in the local community. As we are part of the local community, we had absolutely no engagement, notification or consultation prior to the application being submitted. Now, we're about half a mile away. The statement that the development will enhance tourism in the area is questionable. There is also several other glamping sites already in the area. So we have a number of concerns and objections to the development. We live in a quiet rural area where agriculture is the most important industry in the area. How you can see tourism as beneficial to this area is incomprehensible. Increased safety issues, traffic, noise, potential fires, additional rubbish will only harm our local agricultural and our area in general. Our single track road, which has a speed limit of 60 miles an hour, has a good number of blind spots. Some of these already have been covered. Inexperienced drivers on single track roads have no concept of passing places or driving to the road conditions, or how to pass the many walkers that we get in the road. Walkers can vary in age from the very young to one elderly resident in her late 80s. There's people pushing prams, there's families out for bike rides, and there's people on their horses. And there's also frequent movement of sheep and cattle from one field to another. In addition, if both our neighbours and our own driveway is used as a passing place because it has a big space at the front, will we then become responsible for repairing it or replacing it? Or will Ayrshire Road Alliance take that? Noise. Noise travels. There are no buildings to dampen any sounds. And a bit of earth built up is not going to help it either. I'm quite sure there will be responsible adults who will visit the site, but equally, I'm very sure that groups of people will come along with their music blaring out. Will someone from the council be in duty 24/7 to come and resolve any issues we have with this? Site. The field is in direct eye line from our house. Putting lighting in this area is just ludicrous. Soakaway. I heard it mentioned earlier, but whose land? I didn't see anything about the soakaways. Whose land will the soakaway go into? And has this already been agreed with the respective owner of the farmland? And lastly, I have some concerns about the high hedge in the field. So it was mentioned that they have to be retained. Well, previously, when the barn at Hillhead Farm was converted into a home, the original people in that barn removed the hedge, and there's no comeback on them. The hedge was just ripped out. So what happens if this lot just rip out this long hedge? There's wildlife in the area. The hedges are used by nesting birds. There's wild deer in the woods adjoining the plot directly onto this site. And finally, could I put it to you, the panel? If you lived in a quiet, rural location, would you want a glamping site so close to your home and family? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Any questions from Mrs. Turner? No. Oh, thanks. Thank you very much. Mrs. Turner was the last of the objectors we're going to hear today, so I'm going to call for the agent, Jim Malcolm, the agent for the applicant. Hi, Mr. Malcolm. We've got 15 minutes. And I've been pretty generous with the time, so I'll get a bit of leeway there.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to be heard. The context for this development is that the coal industry has gone, the open casts have gone, Dumfries House has opened its doors to hospitality, and we're also close to the Southwest 300 route. This application aims to capitalise on tourism by providing a countryside location 10 minutes from Dumfries House to provide accommodation for an affordable sector and different experience that the current hotel market can provide. For this, we have consulted Visit Scotland and Business Gateway, and we note that the Chief Planner's report states the business plan is presenting a very strong case for a viable business. To reassure members of the committee, the clients already operate a successful hospitality business outside Glasgow, and they're bringing this knowledge and expertise to the countryside business. The client wishes to identify a local person to be caretaker for the site and to provide maintenance, and intends to employ a contractor from the Cumnock area to undertake the works. We are required to have a site licence under the Caravan Site and Control Development Act, which allows the local authority to licence and control caravan sites. We are happy to submit a management plan as per the condition, and we'll look at the best practice for running caravan sites. We moved the site as far away as possible from the houses and introduce landscaping and a bund 2 metres in height to reduce the impact on residential amenity. We are sensitive to the concerns of residents and fully respect these. However, we believe the robust report of handling has responded to these issues in full. We are happy to submit a sustainable transport plan to reduce the environmental impact, and we will implement the biodiversity plan and the landscaping. Above all, we believe this site will help realise and deliver the aims of the tourism policies that were approved last year in LDP2, and will do this in a responsible way. We accept the carefully considered report by the Chief Planning Officer and the recommendation of approval subject to conditions, and seek the committee's approval. Thank you for your time listening, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Much. I'm going to take Councillor Maitland, then Councillor Lennox.
Can I ask why or how the company found out about this site and why they chose it?
I'm not privy to the actual understandings of that, but I believe it was a friend that was introduced from the owner. I believe they're friends.
Can I ask another question? Ms. Turner said that none of the residents were consulted. Can you confirm this, please?
We don't do the consultations. It's the planning officer. It's the planning department that does the neighbour notifications.
But the company itself never thought to contact the residents?
No.
Thank you. That's all.
Councillor Lennox.
Thanks for your presentation. I appreciate it's early days in terms of your potential management plan that we need to submit in respect to this application. Would it be your intention to include a warden on site 24/7 within that management plan?
I wouldn't expect there to be someone there 24/7, no. I don't think that's expected of any caravan site.
Happy with that answer. So, Councillor Cowan.
Thank you, Chair. The road safety aspects, can you tell me what assessment the company did on the C61, the single track road, please?
We had to do a traffic management plan for the construction traffic, which was accepted by ARA, and that includes the kind of route and the passing places, etc. And that was accepted by Ayrshire Roads Alliance.
Quick follow-up, Chair. Sorry, maybe I didn't describe it properly. I'm not really interested in the construction management plan. I'm interested in the users and the frequency of visitors and how they will use that single track. So did the company look at any impact assessment on that area?
I think there's to be a further condition which will address that in full, and we'll take on board everything that's said, especially today. So yeah, that would be normal practice.
Just a quick question for myself. When do you see the site being open? What kind of season do you see it? Is it for spring through summer, winter? Or?
I think it would be seasonal, but I think it would be available all the time, but more seasonal.
So potentially all year round?
Yes.
Yep. Councillor Maitland.
Could you tell me what the maximum capacity for the 10 pods would be?
They're 2 and 3 bedroom, and there's 10 of them, so I would say 20 to 30 people. There's no.
So, please don't shout for the public gallery, thanks. But let the councillors ask the questions.
Thank you, Chair. No, there was a figure of 57 mentioned earlier, so I was just wondering if it could be clarified. Sorry, the figure of 57 was mentioned earlier, but you're saying...
They're 2 and 3 bedroom units, so, no one would have any control over where people slept, but that's the size of the units.
Can I ask one more question? You said that the company already has a site in Glasgow. Can you tell me where it is in Glasgow or outside Glasgow?
I don't know, sorry.
Okay, no, the follow-on question falls. Thank you.
Any other questions, ma'am? Councillor Peter, maybe?
Thank you, Chair. As if this was passed, would pets be allowed on the site? You've heard the concerns about dogs.
My understanding is that that's not been clarified whether they would be allowed or not. If it was to be such a concern, it's something that could certainly be considered.
We bring in Councillor Hogg online.
Thanks very much, Chair. It's just for clarification. This site could take 57 to 60 people at any one time, perhaps with pets, but the applicant, you didn't consult or do any scoping with all the relative neighbours prior to putting in this planning application. Is that correct?
What happened was it was a previous owner of Augusta House, and I went and chapped the door prior to the application going in, but they then sold their house. But I didn't approach anyone else, no.
Thank you.
Councillor Cowan?
Thank you, Chair. It was mentioned earlier there would be possible employment of one person to sort of manage the site. Would they be available 24/7? Would they be based on the site? Who would be in actual control of the site once it was operational?
The person I spoke about earlier was a caretaker, and they would be available when required. I'm involved in other caravan sites, and one of the other ones, for example, is taking on a full-time caretaker who's there pretty much through the working hours. I'm not sure if they'd be available 24 hours, but that's the way that would be dealt with.
I don't see any other members want to ask a question or online. So thank you very much, Mr. Mill. Okay, members, at this point, I'm going to close the hearing procedure. I'm going to hand back over to Madeline, who's going to respond to some of the items raised during the hearing process.
Thanks, Chair. There was a point raised about a site visit. I would note that members were invited to a site visit this week, and several members attended that site visit to view the site. There was some queries or some points raised about the size and the number of bedrooms and the number of guests. So I would clarify that there's 10 units proposed of sort of 4 different designs, but 8 of those units will have 1 bedroom, and you would expect would sleep 2 people, and 2 of those units will have 2 bedrooms and could sleep 4 people. So I don't have the number in front of me. I'm kind of quickly trying to do the maths in my head there, but that's the number of guests per unit. We couldn't obviously necessarily restrict how many people would be sleeping in one unit at a time, but that's the number of beds and bedrooms.
Sorry, please don't shout out for the public. We're going through a proper procedure here, thanks.
My colleague in Environmental Health has clarified that the short-term let licence process could actually restrict that as well. So that's just some further clarity there. And there was some queries raised about the notification process and the publicity process. We are required to neighbour notify as part of any planning application. Essentially, any property within 20 metres of the application boundary any property that can be identified would receive a letter. Where the application site is bounded by fields or open land, the application will then be publicised in the local newspaper. Letters were sent to any property that was within 20 metres of the boundary, and aside from that, the application was publicised in the local newspaper, I believe the Cumnock Chronicle. Just with regards to some of the roads matters as well, we can't sort of necessarily restrict the individual driving of road users. Every user of any road is responsible to take proper care when driving and using the road. So that's where we can obviously take into account road impacts and potential road impacts for a development. We can't necessarily take into account the potential behaviour of any road users in terms of road safety. And I would also clarify that the construction traffic management plan that was submitted, that covers only construction traffic to the site. And I didn't feel it necessary to restrict in any way the traffic related to the actual operation of the site. So when the site is actually in operation, users of the site won't be restricted in the routes that they can take. The routes where the site is only accessed from the south, that only relates to construction traffic. I think that was everything I had to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Madeline. Okay, members, I'm going to open it up for comments, discussion at this point. Councillor Lennox.
Thanks, Chair. This is a hard year, isn't it? Firstly, I think I certainly would have concerns as well in terms of increased traffic on these single track roads. We've seen in other parts of the authority the impact of increased construction traffic, etc. Maybe not to the same extent as we would get here, but certainly you're seeing an increase in construction traffic and potential user traffic on single track roads. And as I've said before in this particular forum, these roads were only built for the traffic that they see on them nowadays. The other thing would be, it would concern me if there wasn't somebody on site essentially policing the site on a 24-hour basis. In my experience, through I've had a touring caravan for years, and I've been on sites that are only attended or only have an attendant on them during office hours. And it's the old adage, when the cat's away, the mice will play. When there's no somebody on site, there could be a warden there till 11 o'clock, but see the minute the warden walks off the site, that's when the party starts. And I can just envisage hot tubs and alcohol and everything else, that there'd been all-night parties, etc. So I would have a bit of a concern there if there wasn't somebody on site 24/7 to monitor it, if it was to be approved. I'll leave it at that just now, Chair. But I do have, at this point in time, I do have concerns about the potential.
Councillor Lennox. Councillor Watts.
Thank you, Chair. No, I do have serious concerns with this application. When we went to the site visit on Thursday, I arrived probably slightly earlier than the planning officers turned up. The road is not suitable for the level of traffic that potentially could come through the construction period. It is not suitable for any incoming visitors throughout the ongoing period once it's developed. We were waiting for the other members of the committee to turn up, and a van shot down past the site and actually ended up going on the verge, pulling away from the verge. It is far, far too narrow. The passing place that Ara is saying is acceptable, where I parked my car, is in reality an entrance to a driveway. So it's not really, in my view, acceptable to call that a passing place. And one passing place on that entire stretch of road is just completely unacceptable. So I'll leave it at that, Chair, for the moment.
Thanks. Well, Barry, would you want to make any comment on that this time?
Yep, I think the use of the road end as a passing place is something that happens across the road network. Passing places are constructed they're constructed of similar sizes and dimensions to the location that you're referring to there, Councillor Bott. So that's the kind of thing that happens across the road network, and that's why we deem that acceptable across that short section of the C61 coming from the B-class road to the south of the site.
Thanks, Barry. I'm going to bring in Councillor Hogg, then Councillor Linda Maven.
Thanks, Chair. I'm just having a wee. I did visit the site myself because obviously I was working, and I agree with what my colleagues are saying about the transport infrastructure. And if we go to paragraph 34, I'm highlighting design and placemaking with policies DES 1 and 14 of LBT2 and MP4. We should be demonstrating 6 qualities, and I don't see these 6 qualities of being achieved. 1 being distinctive, 2 being connected, and sustainability would be questionable as well. So I would highlight these 3 policies in relation to this development, and I find it doesn't really reach that criteria for me. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Hogg. Councillor Maven.
Thanks, Chair. Just a wee bit of clarification I'm looking for. There's been a couple of mentions of other glamping sites close by, and there's been different distances mentioned. Do we know how close, is there one, is there more than one? Do we know how close they are to that site?
The only site I'm aware of is the one that's been referenced by a couple of the objectors there. I'm not sure of the exact distance, but it's accessed just slightly further down the C61 road to the south, so it is accessed from the same road. Aside from that, I'm not aware of any other glamping sites in the vicinity.
Do you know how big that other site is? Is it bigger than this or smaller?
I believe it's smaller. I think it maybe has 4 units at that site. Not certain, but I think that's what it has.
Yeah, I'm going to bring in Councillor Maitland first, then Councillor Petermain.
Thank you, Chair. Can I have clarification? Is this agricultural or brown site? Because it said change of agricultural use, but we keep going on about a small portion of brown site. Thank you.
So part of the site does meet the definition of brownfield because it was previously developed. And the definition of brownfield is land that has previously been developed, and there is still some evidence of that development there. So an individual piece of land can obviously have both definitions, and so that small area of this land where the equestrian site would be classified as brownfield, and then the remainder of the land is greenfield as it hasn't been developed.
Would this development be happening if there wasn't that part of brown site in among the agricultural land?
So it had the policy 9, it's laid out in the report. Policy 9 had some weight. Policy 9 is the brownfield policy from MPF4. It had some weight due to the partial brownfield policy status of the land, but the application has also been found to meet with the key tourism policies of MPF4 and LDP2, and those were the most important policies in assessing the principle of the development. So I can't sort of theorise as to what the outcome would be if it was a slightly different situation, but it also met with those tourism policies, which were had more significant weight than policy 9.
Okay, you've got a follow-up. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I've actually got several questions, but I'll stop after this one, if that's okay. I'm looking at the policy Tour 2, which obviously encourages development within the countryside, but on the LDP, we're restricting clusters. So we seem to be in some form of conflict here. If we can't expand on clusters, yet we can expand on tourism. So I'm very confused about how one policy that was supposed to be good is 2 policies that's supposed to be good are coming into conflict here. And I think that would be Tour 2 and Res 3. Thank you.
I think they are covering different things. The cluster policy is more to do with residential development. Tier 2 is more about sort of encouraging tourist development on that. In East Ayrshire, we do have a shortage of tourist accommodation, and certainly Tier 2 as well as MPF4 encourages sort of an increase in tourist accommodation in the countryside.
Okay, Councillor Peter Maben.
Thank you, Chair. It's, I understand the passion from the objectors on various grounds. I'm also concerned about how narrow this road is and what kind of traffic's going to be going up and down there. There's some confusion about the numbers of people who are going to be allowed on the site, and how late in the evenings these people will be playing loud music, possibly. So I've concerns about noise pollution as well. We've not got a clear answer on whether pets will be allowed on the site. I can imagine a family bringing a dog. If you've got a couple of families and then there's 2 dogs and or 3 dogs on the site, you're looking at noise pollution and disturbance to local wildlife and agricultural animals as well. So I have major concerns about this planning application on a couple of different grounds.
Just with regards to the sort of dog pet issue, it's not really something that we would be able to control through sort of planning conditions or anything like that. But with regards to the sort of management of the site, we do have a condition seeking a management plan from the applicant, which would give more details of how the site will be managed on a day-to-day basis and who it will be staffed by. And with regards to playing of music and that kind of thing, as I had kind of referenced before, Environmental Health have advised us that the site will require a short-term lets licence, and so there would be conditions sought by Environmental Health through that process, which would potentially limit noise at the site and hours of use of hot tubs and things sort of similar to that.
I'm going to begin, Councillor Cowan.
Thank you, Chair. I have serious questions about the suitability of the single track road for this type of development, but that's already been covered by my colleagues. I appreciate the planning officer saying there will be a management plan submitted, but the description of the lack of the management overview of the site also is a worry for me for potential dealing with issues as they arise, disturbance and noises and impact that will have on the residents, especially the residential amenity. So the noise disturbances and the lighting, etc., really are quite a concern based on the proximity to the residents' properties. And the other one I had was picked up by Councillor Maitland regarding the conflict of a previous dwelling house had been rejected for this area, but this type of development is suitable. So I appreciate what the planning officer said, but there does seem to be a conflict there for me for these 2 policies in this instance. Thank you.
Councillor Carroll, I was going to bring in Carol, then Craig.
Just on the matter of antisocial behaviour, that is covered by the short-term licensing policy, and so any activities would be managed through that. So we would be seeking to understand how the applicants would manage those situations, both to prevent them, but if there were circumstances where behaviour was unacceptable, how they would go on to manage that during the stay and after the stay as well.
Craig.
Thank you, Chair. It was just to kind of maybe reinforce a few of the comments made by certainly Madeline in relation to 1 or 2 matters. I think, members, you'll see the proposed management condition that's suggested in the papers is on page 19 of the papers, and it is the suggested planning condition number 3 there. And obviously it does talk about a management plan being required to be submitted before any tourist accommodation came into use. and it would require to be approved by the planning authority. So I think there are a number of concerns clearly being raised by a number of members here today, and I know that you're not yet at the point where you're considering whether or not the application should be refused or approved, but clearly there is a suggested planning condition there that would also include details, a requirement for details on the day-to-day site management and the maintenance of the site, and how potential use and guest behaviour issues are dealt with. Now, I appreciate that wording there, covers matters quite widely, but quite clearly, I'm also aware, as officers, we are hearing a number of also concerns that if that was part of a suite of conditions, if an application came in to discharge that, the matters that, you would be raising, that we would be considering as part of any application. So it's just to kind of flag up, there is that condition there. And once the management plan is approved, obviously, it would have to be implemented for the lifetime of the site. That's independent of any other process and any other legislation. And obviously, environmental health colleagues have also confirmed that there is still a separate process there in terms of licensing requirements. But I appreciate this is just at the point where you are considering matters, and I just felt it was appropriate to highlight what the current proposed wording of that condition is. Obviously, it would be for members as part of your deliberations whether you feel there may require to be tweaks to it or whether you're satisfied with any wording, because as we know, part of the determination here is to assess the application not only in terms of the development plan, which is in terms of the Local Development Plan 2 and National Planning Framework 4, but also unless there are material, but the second bit is unless there are material considerations to indicate otherwise. We also are aware that a material consideration can be an appropriate condition to mitigate or minimise any potential planning issues that have been highlighted and identified. And obviously, the reason I flag that up is I'm conscious that one of the objectors touched upon the Equality Act in her submission, and obviously one of the things is the whole planning process. Consideration is given, and Pamela can metaphorically kick me under the table if I'm wrong in that, but we do consider equality impacts as the plan evolves and goes through the statutory process, not only with us, but also when an independent reporter looks at it. But even here today, members, we can look at, if I term it in the language of the Equality Act, if there are reasonable adjustments that you feel could be made. By that I mean mitigations. We could also look to consider them as part of the application, and that's why I'm also flagging up that particular condition, or there are a suite there of suggested conditions if you felt that they would minimise or mitigate some of the concerns that you have, that you've heard from the objectors, you've heard also from the applicant, and anything that you've read from the papers or seen on the site visit.
Thanks, Craig. Councillor Hogg.
Thanks, Chair. Just going back to the tourism, and again, we're all pleased to see tourism within our area, and there's no doubt about that. But I'm also aware that the Barony Wellness Park was granted, I think, last year for a substantial amount of eco homes well within this area, which would probably be a boundary to this. So again, there'll be an impact from that. So my concern is we're going to end up with potentially two sites offering the same service within a stone's throw of each other. And while that might not be a planning consideration, it may be a consideration for us and in the protection of our countryside to an extent as well. Thanks, Chair.
Through you, Chair, obviously I take on board the comments of Councillor Hogg, but as members are aware, we need to deal with the application before us today on its particular planning merits rather than necessarily regarding anything else. So it was just to also flag that up, as I'm sure planning colleagues would also reinforce that message.
Thanks, Craig. I've got Councillor Mabin and then Councillor McGee.
Thank you, Chair. I hear what you're saying about this. This would go as planning mitigation measures, and it could also be dealt with later through environmental health or through the short leasing department. I'm worried that it wouldn't come back to this planning committee if there was a management plan for the site produced later on. I'm seriously worried that we would go ahead, we could pass this without a serious management plan in front of us, and we're opening a can of worms for complaint after complaint after complaint for planning officers to deal with, for environmental health officers to deal with, and for the short lesson officers to deal with.
Through you, Chair, and obviously Pamela may want to also come in as the Chief Planning Officer. Obviously, I think I've certainly been taking notes of some of the concerns that members have been raising. I'm assuming that other colleagues have been as well. And I appreciate we're not yet at the point where you are physically determining the application. So it's at the moment, I frame it just as an if, that if this were to be approved, obviously, planning colleagues here today are clearly taking on board the comments and issues being raised by members, and I would, Pamela would do the same. Would assure you that given those concerns, if any application did come in, then that would be at the forefront of officers' minds, particularly in the planning service, and they would take that on board when or if we get to that point that it were approved and then an application were to come in to discharge that condition. But I'm conscious I'm speaking for another service here, and Pamela may also want to come in.
Don't disagree with what Craig's saying in terms of the management plan. We're hearing what you're saying about what you'd be looking for in terms of that management plan, and we'd be looking for a very robust management plan, because at the end of the day, if there's issues with it, it will fall to the planning service as well as environmental health. And you'll be aware that our enforcement service is really there is a lot of inquiries, there's a lot of issue for them to address on that. So we will be conscious in terms of the management plan and what is being included within that.
Thanks, Pamela. Councillor McGee.
Aye, we've always got concerns about wee single track roads, but as somebody that's stayed in lots of wee places similar to what's proposed here, Skye, Ayrshire, Barra, Mull, you've got to navigate the single track roads with great care, understand that, and that's sometimes part of the beauty of going on holiday. However, my one question really is today with again, officers, when they're going through all this whole process, have got to weigh up lots of pros and cons, and they've got to look at all different policies, NPF 4, local development plan, tourism. But I'm wondering, when councillors are actually in the room and debating this and having to decide, how much weight should we put on the residential amenity policy, Res 3, Roman numeral 1? Because I have got concerns there that is there a unacceptable disturbance to local residents, again, compared to the benefit of tourism? So I just like to ask that question. Thank you.
Thanks for the question, Councillor. Ultimately, the weight to be put on any particular matter is for the decision maker, and the councillors here are the decision makers collectively. So if there was concern over residential amenity that you felt was much more significant than officers do, then clearly that would affect the planning balance, and you're entitled to place the weight on the policies that you think fit, if it either doesn't comply with something, or if it does, or you don't think it goes far enough. We've obviously heard from other officers about whether some of those things can be mitigated by condition and so on. They can help to make things compliant if you have planning conditions. You have a recommendation in our assessment that says we think on balance that there's sufficient here that there is compliance, but any decision maker may come to a different opinion because you're weighing everything up and you're placing the weight on the view that you come to as the decision maker. So ultimately, I can't really guide you, because all the planners, I mean, you can ask a planner a question, something will probably all come up with a different weighting on something. There is a degree of balance and argument, and that's part of the system. People can come to legitimately different views, but ultimately it's about how you reach that decision, how you weigh that out, and how you explain that. So we've got a report in front of you that explains why we think this is okay and why we think the policies are complied with. But you'd be perfectly entitled to come to a different view if you have different opinions on those policies and compliance matters and how much weight you want to put in different things. So I hope that gives you a bit of a steer, but ultimately it crowds your decision, as you're the decision maker here, and it's up to yourselves what weight you place on the different policies.
Thanks for that, David. It's really helpful. Councillor Cowan.
Thank you, Chair. Can the planning officers direct me to which condition actually addresses the road safety mitigation factors and concerns? I see sustainable travel is mentioned in condition 4, but the road safety aspects that we've heard this morning, which condition covers that?
So as I had mentioned in my presentation, we're recommending the insertion of a condition to deal with the implementation of the construction traffic management plan. So the applicant has submitted a construction management plan, which will be, if the application is approved, will be approved as part of it. But then we want to add a condition just to ensure that it's implemented. And then aside from that, yeah, there is a sustainable travel condition. And those are the two conditions that would relate to road matters.
So a quick follow-up, Chair. I realise there's going to be an addition of a construction management plan, but again, I'm talking about the day-to-day operational road safety aspects. What condition or mitigation factors are we going to put in for that, if any?
There aren't any conditions relating to that. Nothing like was recommended by ARA, and they didn't have any concerns relating to traffic relative to the actual operation of the development. The only concerns they had were relative to construction traffic. But with regards to the operation of the development, ARA were of the view that traffic wouldn't be significant enough that it would have any serious negative impact on the road network, so they didn't recommend any conditions relating to that or any mitigation.
Through you, Chair. And perhaps to be helpful to members, because I appreciate there's a number of issues and a number of considerations you're having to weigh into this, but I wonder if planning colleagues may be able to help. That I think perhaps the question was if members may, and we don't know yet if members are at a point where they may be willing to consider approving this, is there any potential planning condition that they feel may mitigate any of the concerns or issues? I'm assuming that given it's a C-class road, it is a public road, it's on the adopted road, therefore the road, including the verge either side, comes within the confines of the verge. If that may assist, because I think that's possibly what Councillor Cowan's question is. If they felt that could there be any form of condition?
It's just a quick discussion there. There may be various options that can come forward. It maybe depends on exactly what the members' concerns are and what you think would be needed to get over those concerns. I know that passing places and kind of width of the road has obviously been an element that's been discussed. I would suggest that there's a potential for a condition that requires the applicant to provide passing places on the road, and the development can't start until they've been provided. Now, they may be able to be provided within the public road verge, but they may not. So there's no guarantee that they'll actually be able to go and deliver that. But if that was members' particular concern, that the road needed more passing places, for example, then I would suggest that a condition could be worded in such a way that could achieve that, and that development shouldn't start until that's evidence that it's been completed. But I suppose some of it depends on just what your concerns are and what you think would be sufficient to get us over the line there. So that's perhaps a position on passing places. If it was a position that, say, you didn't want patrons to take the longer part of the road, similar to the construction traffic, then again, a condition can be put on. Certainly it's harder to enforce that on an ongoing basis, but it can potentially be built into the management plan and so on as well, so that people are made aware. Signage can perhaps be erected to make patrons aware of how they should enter and exit the site. Ultimately, I think it will depend on what members are looking for, but there may be scope to do certain things on the road that might improve things. So hopefully that gives a bit of help, Councillor.
Is there any further questions, and are you ready to go to deliberate? Councillor Maitland?
I'm ready to go to deliberation, over deliberation, ready to go forward. Are we at that point?
That's exactly what I was going to ask.
Thank you.
So-
Well, in that case, I think we should refuse the application, and I won't go into too many details, but really against Res 3, this is not acceptable level of amenity and it's not a sensitive development. Thank you.
No, Councillor Watts?
Yes, no, I will second Councillor Maitland. I think it is completely and utterly inappropriate. And the residential amenity is the big major one for me, but also the road safety as well. If we didn't refuse this, I think it would be extremely detrimental to the local community in that area.
Chair, I'm conscious we had a motion from Councillor Maitland to refuse just solely on the basis of residential amenity policy Res 3. Councillor Watson second, and you also made reference to road safety concerns. I'm just wondering, Councillor Maitland, whether or not you would be looking to include that as part of your motion, given the slight divergence.
Thank you, Craig, for the advice. I mean, I have a whole host of objections, but I was sticking to Res 3. But if the objection, I'm quite happy to accept Councillor Watt's objection on roads as well. Thank you.
Councillor Maitland, could you give us more details of what you mean about in terms of residential amenity? Is it loss of privacy or?
Yeah, I'm happy to expand. I thought we just covered it all, so I was quite happy to. But I think the fact that we're told that the light, the noise are acceptable. We are talking about up to 60 people on top of a 5-resident household. One of them, I believe, is only, I mean, we're talking 40 metres away. That's the length, less than the length of a swimming pool. It's largely rural agricultural land, and you would be putting this very dense development at the end of a small cluster. I could do some more, but I think I'm quite content with that. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anybody else otherwise minded that the application is up for approval? We've got a proposal to refusal. No. Okay, then application is refused in terms of the LDP Res 3 and what's the other one? Road safety. Yeah, no. Yeah. Okay. Members, I'm conscious that was quite a long hearing there, and I think would you be happy to take a little comfort break? So will we say 15 minutes? Yeah, thanks. Robert, can we pause the recording? Thanks.